Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, gentlemen, thank you for your service. Admiral Fowler, with respect to Venezuela, your views would be very much appreciated, but there's a presumption that the military at this point is the key sort of power base for Maduro, and that as long as they stay with him, he will be incentivized to stay in Venezuela. Is that accurate from your perspective, and what are we doing to try, and what are the Venezuelans, the legitimate president, what is he trying to do to pull the military away?
Senator, Venezuela has about 2,000 generals, more than all of NATO combined, and majority of them are on the payroll of Maduro via illicit drug trafficking and corrupt businesses, and that's what he's using to buy their loyalty and their protection. In addition, Cuba, as I mentioned in my opening statement, pretty much owns the security around Maduro and is deeply entrenched in the intelligence service, and we can go into more detail in closed session. And so that remains the center of gravity for Maduro. The legitimate government of President Guaido has offered amnesty and a place for the military forces, most of which we think would be loyal to the Constitution, not to a dictator, a place to go. And I think the diplomacy path is that path that we're trying to support.
Thank you. Over many, many years, I've had complaints about the human rights abuses in Central America, Honduras and Guatemala particularly. In fact, there's a report recently that provided by the Sisters of Mercy that a former member of the Honduran Congress has been imprisoned in a press conference suggesting who might have been involved in the killing of Berta Cáceres, who was a prominent environmentalist in Honduras. And this is just one example. So how are we conditioning our security assistance and our human rights training in these countries to promote the rule of law?
During my recent trip, Senator, I emphasized professionalism as key to being a legitimate force, and professionalism, a big part of that is human rights. And it's like blood running through your veins. If you're not legitimate to your people, you're not going to have a force that is going to ultimately secure the population. We had those discussions with all the leaders of those countries, the chiefs of their defense, and we have a human rights team that goes in there and performs workshops. Part of the steps that must be taken by the embassy and our country teams to certify the deliverance of those aids includes a certification that they're going to go to vetted forces and forces that have complied. So we're looking at that every day, Senator. It's very important to our efforts.
Let me turn to General Waldhauser, but there's I think an issue that both of your AORs share. It's under-resourcing, both military, but also on the civilian side, the AID, State Department, et cetera. And when you talk about capacity building, both of you are very eloquent and very focused. But I've traveled through AFRICOM, as you know. General Waldhauser, you were host to me when I returned. In Somalia, one of the reasons al-Shabaab is so influential is that they're able to collect taxes, administer justice, provide basic public services, the civilian capacity. And so the question here now is that, even with all the military effort we put in, if we don't have the civilian capacity component, I don't think your mission is going to succeed. So you can start, and you have the similar problems, I think, in South America also.
Senator, thank you. To just provide some context, today, since the first time since 1991, we have a USAID mission director in Mogadishu with the ambassador. Now, this is a very important step because in December of 2017, USAID signed over $300 million compact with the country of Djibouti. This is very significant. There are issues of education, agriculture, government business, and so forth. And so it's very important now that we have an ambassador in the country alongside with a senior USAID rep who can oversee and synchronize those development efforts and make sure that the return on investment of that $300 million is well spent.
But that is a good example of how it's working, but there are many more examples where we don't have the resources, we don't have ambassadors. The ambassador in Mogadishu arrived, a few months ago, finally, after years. So, I mean, there's this complementary civilian capacity issue that if we don't get right, you can do your job very well, and we will not succeed. So, Admiral, follow your points, because there are many of the same situations in South America and Latin America.
Exactly the same situation. The military needs to be the small M in support of the big diplomacy and the big economic E. And I see that where it's working. Example would be in El Salvador. We've made some significant progress in the reduction of violence. And this has been by targeting in really bad neighborhoods, some 50 locations where USAID comes in with public and private partnerships and partnership with the government. And we're there in small presence to connect those vetted police force with the military.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen.
I think we're all aware that we're going